Live everywhere.
Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Waldman. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Thursday, March 15th. That's the Ides of March. So just, watch your back. I'm just saying. I'm not like all of you are necessarily in trouble. And the Senate can't get its act together anyway. So you're largely, I think, safe, even if you are Caesar yourself. Welcome to another edition of Daily Coast Radio's Kagro in the Morning Show. We are ready to bring you a fantastic show on the air. If anyone has got one, please bring it forward at this point, and we'll nominate it for inclusion. It is Tournament Thursday, which, as I said in the Morning Post, I think you're legally allowed to say without getting sued by the NCAA. Not that that's a major issue for most of us, but it interrupts my life. I can't decide whether I love or hate this tournament, or really, I guess I should say, I can't decide whether I love or hate, the fact that hypothetically some people choose to engage in placing wagers, let's say, on the play of this tournament. Not me. I kick myself very hard every year for not simply just saying, why don't I just either ignore the tournament or just sit back and enjoy it. And I don't know. I guess I don't care enough unless I have some stake in it, which by which, of course, we mean not a monetary stake at all. That is not allowed or something. And in case it is allowed, then in which, in some states I'm doing it, and in some states I'm not. I'm not doing it anywhere. I'm just saying it's a big pain in the neck. I should just switch over. I think now is the time for me to switch over to just simply letting my kids make the picks for me. And that's basically what I did today. Oh, interesting. I guess somebody has decided today's a good day for rototilling outside of our Kagro in the Morning studios, or something quite like it. Anyway, so there'll be a little nice hum in the background. Anyway, Daily Coast Radio is live now. Bill knows, all the way in Portland, Maine, though he be. Kagro X, that's me, David Waldman. Hi. Follows Trump's lead by trying to convince Justin Trudeau that the Tooth Fairy is real and Elvis still works at Burger King. Why not? That has Twitter in an uproar, as it should. It has the entire country in an uproar, and in fact, their country too. And this Trump guy, enough already. Let's be rid of him once and for all, shall we? It's nuts. There's more turmoil going on. I'll have Greg Dworkin with us shortly to sum up on what's news today, but who even knows? Everything's fake. The big thing that's got my attention so far this morning, let's see, where did it start? I've got a couple of different reports on it. I see the Hill has jumped in on this, but I think I first saw it in the Washington Post, the story from Josh Dawsey and Damian Paletta and Erica Werner. In fundraising speech, here's our title. In fundraising speech, Trump says he made up trade claim in meeting with Justin Trudeau. I am amazed that he said that out loud, I guess, but he's a dotard, and I guess he just really, he's begging to be caught, and no one will catch him in anything. We see what he's doing, but no one will, let's say, arrest him and try him for treason. Though lying to Justin Trudeau might not actually constitute treason. There's plenty of other things we can arrest him for, and quite literally charge him that way. We'll get to some of the discussion of that, but you know where I'm going with that. Here's the story, though, from yesterday. President Trump boasted in a fundraising speech Wednesday that he made up information in a meeting with the leader of a top U.S. ally, that would be Canada, saying he insisted to Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau that the United States runs a trade deficit with its neighbor to the north, without knowing whether that was the case. More importantly, I think, without caring whether that was the case. And that's just his basic MO. So this is, I guess, here's the quote, I guess, which gets caught on tape. However, I don't even care how. It's taped at this fundraising speech. The fundraising speech is probably closer to the mark. Trudeau, we could put on the voice. Trudeau came to see me. He's a good guy, Justin. He said, no, we have a trade deficit with you. We have none. Now, by the way, this quote is gobbledygook to start with. Plus, of course, this is the lie that I told to Justin Trudeau on top of it all. So even if he gets it right, it's not right. But, it comes out in Trump fashion. It's very difficult to even tell what he thinks he's telling in this story. Trudeau came to see me. He's a good guy, Justin. He said, no, we have a trade deficit with you. We have none. I don't know what that we have none is supposed to be. That's, I think, his characterization of Trudeau speaking. Donald, please, Trump said, mimicking Trudeau. Oh, he was mimicking Trudeau. How does Donald Trump sound mimicking Trudeau? What does Trudeau even sound like? I don't know. This is Trump doing Trudeau. No, we have a trade deficit with you. We have none. Donald, please. There, that's my Trudeau. How's that? Okay. Well, this is all according to audio of the private event in Missouri, obtained by the Washington Post. Nice guy, good looking, good to know. Comes in, Donald, we have no trade deficit. He's very proud because everybody else, we're getting killed. What the F does he even mean? So he's proud. I say, wrong, Justin, you do. I didn't even know. I had no idea. I just said, you're wrong. You know why? Because we're so stupid. What the are you talking about? That's his line. You know why? Because we're so stupid. And I thought they were smart. I said, you're wrong, Justin. He said, nope, we have no trade deficit. I said, well, in that case, I feel differently. I said, but I don't believe it. I sent one of our guys out. His guy, my guy, they went out. I said, check, because I can't believe it. Well, sir, you are actually right. We have no deficit. But that doesn't include energy and timber. And when you do, we lose $17 billion a year. It's incredible. Don't know what he's talking about. No idea. The Office of the United States Trade Representative says the United States has a trade surplus with Canada, which we do. So I don't even know what Trump is trying to get Trudeau to admit to. Trudeau says what? He says we have no trade deficit. Is that what that's supposed to mean? I don't even know why he's worried about this. But, the big takeaway from it obviously is Trump is finally owning up to, well, he's not owning up to. He's finally saying what we all know to be the case. Donald Trump's basic MO is he says whatever he thinks makes him sound right, makes him sound smart. That's a bad idea for him, but whatever makes him sound right, whatever makes his argument sound like the correct one. And it's amazing that we don't, we see it, and I know reporters see it. And I know even like Daniel Dale, who should be all over this, and I guess he probably is. He's obviously working for a Canadian paper, so this would be his beat 10 times over. And I'm sure he's doing great things, and he's counted the lies, and it's very clear from the fact that he counts the lies and catalogs them that he knows that this is pervasive, that that's all Donald Trump does is lie about things. But I don't know, I guess it's like it hasn't sunken in with enough people that we still don't treat each of these things as one more thing to add to the list. He lied 900 times. No, that's all he does is lie. He doesn't bother to learn facts. He doesn't care. Why would he? If there's a fact that doesn't say what he wants it to say, he'll lie. If there's a fact that does say what he wants it to say, but he doesn't know the fact, he'll lie. And like I've said before, the most on-the-nose quote I've ever heard about the guy from somebody who actually had personal dealings with him is he'll lie to you about what time it is just for the practice. He doesn't care what time it is. He doesn't care that you sincerely want to know what time it is. He's been asked a question, and he just wants to say things that make him look like he knows what he's doing. So he lies and lies constantly. This is where the crowd size at the inauguration lie came from. This is where the 3 to 5 million illegal immigrants voted lie comes from. Is there any basis in reality? Has he read something and forgotten exactly what the details were? No, he just says it because why? I want to win the election. I didn't win the election. Yes, I did. Millions of invisible votes were cast by legal residents that were not counted because George Soros. Whatever. He'll just say it. This is where, and we saw it in the run-up to the debate, to the election. It's not a surprise. Hillary Clinton, over-prepared Hillary Clinton, the biggest sin in the world. But her emails, and she knows too much. Comes to the debate, debates him on substance and policy, and what does he say in the middle of her sentence? Wrong. You're wrong. She just shouts it over her. Is she right? Yeah, she's right. Are you wrong? Yes, I'm wrong. So what? You're wrong. It's a lie. No puppet. You're the puppet. Oh, the whole thing. He just says whatever feels good. He's just out there, essentially verbally pleasuring himself in front of all of us, and we write it down. And each one of these things is an individual fact-checking challenge. What did he say? He said that they dropped a bowling ball. This is another story he came up with. It's in this article. That Japan doesn't let our cars into their country. That's why he's going to have tariffs. The reason is they drop a bowling ball on the car from 20 feet up, and if it makes a dent in the hood, the car fails inspection and can't come into the country. Nobody's ever even made that up before. And we're like, they might drop the bowling ball from 21 feet or maybe 18 feet. Should we check on this? I don't know. As we study this judiciously, as we will, right? This is the same story, by the way. We've had this happen over and over again. This is Newt Gingrich's modus operandi. He just sounds smarter doing it. Now we have Donald Trump, and we all study judiciously, like we were told about Dick Cheney and others during the George W. Bush administration. While we study this as we will, they just create a new reality by the time we're finished. And now here we are. Okay. I gotta stop. I'll catch my breath. Greg is here. Greg's taking a nap. Wake up, Greg. Sorry about that. I'll let it be your turn now. He's a very terrible president. I don't know
he is. The funny thing is, you remember that old game about getting a fortune cookie at a Chinese restaurant and just adding in bed to whatever it is that the thing says?
Yes, I did.
That was a college game. But, when it comes to Newt Gingrich, I just like to add on Mars to whatever it is that you are saying.
Well, you put frankly first.
You dropped a 20-pound bowling ball on the car on Mars.
On Mars, frankly.
Whatever. Or on the moon, because that's Newt. So Simon Rosenberg on Twitter says, this extraordinary claim by the president, coupled with making stuff up, comments regarding Canada, raises real questions about whether the most powerful man in the world can still distinguish between what's true and real and what isn't.
Doesn't want to.
Well, but if you think that that's hyperbole, just consider that he appointed Larry Kudlow to advise him on the economy. So if you really want to talk about not being able to distinguish between what's real and what's not, that's a perfect example. Dana Milbank has a great column today. Have it at the bottom of that long list.
Sniffing. Go ahead.
Larry Kudlow may have been more wrong about the economy than anyone alive, which, by the way, is really difficult, but apparently he's pulled it off.
Yes. There have been some extremely wrong people. But a lot of them Republicans in Congress. One of my favorite documents is the poll quotes from the debate over the 1993 stimulus package. In which like 35 Republicans went on the record saying we were going to have a huge recession in the early to mid 90s. Of course,
he's got pull quotes from Kudlow.
Great.
This is a December 7th, 2007. Despite all the doom and gloom from the economic pessimistas, the resilient U.S. economy continues moving ahead, predicting that gloomy forecasters would wind up with egg on their faces. Kudlow, who previously derided as bubbleheads those who warned about a housing bubble, now wrote that the very positive news in housing should cushion falling home sales and prices. That was 2007. We know what happened after that. There's no recession coming. The pessimists were wrong. It's not going to happen.
Right. Well, cocaine will do that to you.
Right. Kudlow's tendency to err has been nearly flawless, as Jonathan Chait lays out in New York Magazine, but never has Kudlow been as spectacularly wrong as he was before the signal economic event of our time. If you heeded Kudlow's advice in the months before the 2008 crash, you would have been ruined.
Right, and you're not around to say how bad he is because you're ruined.
Right. Even as trouble became clear, Kudlow, a CNBC pundit who is not trained in economics, I would add, therefore qualifying him for a role as an economic advisor, wrote a February 5th, 2008 column in National Review saying he's still betting on and buying Goldilocks, a just right scenario for the long run. Maybe we're going to have a mild correction, maybe not. I'm going to bet the economy will be rebounding sometime this summer, if not sooner. We're in a slow patch, that's all. There's nothing to get in arms about. To the, Animal House, picture.
Oh.
Right?
Right. All is well.
All is well.
I
So
thought the
then when it didn't rebound, the housing continued to collapse. Kudlow was in a CNBC column on July 24th, 2008. He saw in the data an awful lot of very good news, which appears to be pointing to a bottom in the housing problem. In fact, maybe the tiniest beginning of recovery. And then stocks lost half their value in the next couple of months. All of this is to say Kudlow should fit right in with his new colleagues in the Trump administration. This is the same president, after all, who tapped to be the chief scientist of the Agriculture Department, a talk radio host who isn't a scientist,
right.
Named a brain surgeon to run the Department of Housing and Urban Development, floated the idea of his personal pilot as head of the FAA, party planner, bartender, and a Meineke car care branch manager and a cabana boy all found Plum administration jobs. And those were Trump's first choices.
The best people.
Right. With Kudlow now replacing Gary Cohn, the impeccably qualified former Goldman Sachs executive, the second stringers could make their predecessors look like Camelot. So, part of the problem, then he's got others, of course, Kudlow in 2001 about the Bush tax cuts. Faster economic growth and more profitable productivity returns will generate higher tax revenues at the new lower tax rate levels. That didn't happen. 2002, Kudlow arguing for war in Iraq. The shock therapy of decisive war will elevate the stock market by a couple thousand points. 2009, President Obama's waging war on investors. He's waging war against businesses. Inflation could ratchet higher. Of course, stock market and corporate profits climbed to records, but inflation remained historically low. And now, history is repeating himself. This December, Kudlow embraced the Trump tax cuts, dismissed dreary mainstream forecasts, and predicted annual growth as high as 5%.
Right. Why not?
Right? What could possibly go wrong?
25%.
So that's all part of the things that are happening in Trump world, and I think a lot of them are well worth watching. I got some quick quotes here. I put together kind of a lightning round to start my segment. And, part of the problem is that the rumor mill is just, on overtime. And a lot of the stuff that people are reporting, not so good.
No. I was going to say, some people are saying this is the best mill.
People are saying. Fox News' John Roberts reports possible Trump administration changes. National Security Advisor McMaster replaced by John Bolton. VA's Shulkin replaced by Rick Perry.
Sure. Just
Ray
his glasses.
Washburn to Energy. Chief of Staff Kelly replaced by Mick Mulvaney, who already has 2 other jobs.
He's like the Jamaican guy from Living Color of the administration, I guess.
Right. And Michael Abramowitz on Twitter adds, well, when does Betsy DeVos become Secretary of Defense?
Sure. Right. What's in it for Stormy Daniels?
But the bigger problem is that
Hulk
the
Hogan.
figure that is most likely to go, the Crew, Citizens for Ethics in Washington account, Trump is reportedly considering firing Jeff Sessions. Mueller's believed to be investigating events last summer when Trump attempted to pressure Sessions out of his job. Of course, we have this side story here.
Yes.
That Andrew McCabe, if he gets to keep his job until like Sunday, gets to get his pension, and Trump wants him fired before then. Sessions may refuse. Trump may therefore fire Sessions, put Greg Pruitt over at Justice. Pruitt's a former Attorney General of Oklahoma.
Oh.
And then what happens then as acting Attorney General? He couldn't be Attorney General because that would be a cabinet.
Right.
And Mitch McConnell wants none of this. But as acting Attorney General, he could move right into the job because he's already been through a confirmation. So as acting Attorney General, he could then fire Rosenstein, and then we have a constitutional crisis. So that's all the stuff people are talking about this weekend.
Yes, and it's not even this weekend yet. But who cares? You know what? Yes, it is. As a matter of fact, it's Saturday.
Yeah.
Let's all go to bed.
Wait, you can argue with me? By the time we get around to proving it.
Wrong. You're wrong. I'm sorry, Justin. I don't know what you're talking about. And you're not even Justin? I don't care. I called him Justin. His name is Frank. It doesn't matter.
So that's I think you have to keep that all in mind when you look at everything else that's going on. Now, we do have some other lightning round stuff. For example, this one is totally unrelated. But you remember Matthew Heimbach? He was part of the Traditional Workers' Party.
Yes, also King of Saudi Arabia.
Traditionalist Worker Party, excuse me.
That is true. Yes, right. Fine fellow.
Yeah, fine fellow. He helped organize the Charlottesville hate rally, and now he's been arrested for allegedly beating up his wife and his wife's stepfather after cheating on his wife with her stepfather's new wife, who was also his spokesman.
I should say, in fairness, I did not like his wife at all.
I should say, in fairness, you couldn't make this up.
You're wrong. I could. I did. This is fake news, and I made it.
Yeah.
So that's how I know. In fact, I don't even know. There you go. How do you like that? It's so fake, I don't even know I did it. Okay. Does that make it? Doesn't matter whether it makes sense or not. I'm a brain surgeon. I'm better than Carson.
You used to be brain surgeon.
Right.
Then you retired and you went into radio. I mean, that's the way you have to, let's keep the story straight here.
All right.
Right.
Or
so the Republicans are being told, it's really kind of interesting. I just thought you might find this interesting because it goes along with your candidate in a box theory here, which isn't a theory. It is a theory, but it's the theory of gravity. It exists. And this is a piece from Dave Drucker, writing in the Washington Examiner.
King of England, yes.
Candidates who have never been through tough races have a hard time understanding what it's like and usually don't understand it until it's too late.
True.
Liesl Hickey, former executive director of the National Republican Congressional Committee, said, "There's a lot of unprepared candidates who are sitting ducks right now, and they don't even know it." And then they have a list.
Yes, of ducks.
Ducks. Republicans fret there are more Rick Saccones in their ranks. Incumbents on the watch list include Dave Bratt in Virginia's 7th, Tom Garrett in Virginia's 5th, Bob Pittenger in North Carolina's 9th, Ted Budd in North Carolina's 13th, Tim Walberg in Michigan's 7th, Mike Bishop in Michigan's 8th, Glenn Grothman in Wisconsin's 6th, and lastly, Mike Bost in Illinois' 12th. And they and a few others that Republican leaders are monitoring have worrisome deficiencies that could lead to a surprise despite the traditional Republican lean of the districts and the solid support their voters delivered to Trump 16 months ago. They're not raising enough money. They've been outraised by prospective Democratic challengers. And that's where the article stops, and I add that this goes along with the whole concept that given that Connor Lamb won PA 18, there are more than 100 districts in the country that are more competitive than PA 18 was.
Yeah. The task now is to find Democrats who are dissatisfied with the idiots sitting in Congress who are willing to put up with, campaigning and being told or being accused of hating God, of course. If you can put up with all that, you might be able to actually win these congressional seats despite the Republican leanings. I mean, what that was a list of is backbencher idiots who've done nothing and have nothing to say for themselves, period, but occupy the seats because people vote reflexively for whoever has the R line. And, if you in this atmosphere, the lying president who's losing these tremendous, these important special elections, and everybody's seeing he's vulnerable, and you're vulnerable even in, R plus 11 or even greater districts. Yeah, that's what they're worried about. People who occupy these seats, literally just occupy them, and even their own constituents have no idea that they're their congressman.
Mm. So in the last Quinnipiac poll, Morning Joe tweeted a graph they put together. I have that about 2/3 of the way down. Approval for the GOP tax plan. In January, approval was 32. In February, it was 39. And Republicans thought it would just keep going up, and they could use this to just keep their position. And in March, it's 36. So it's not all that popular. And people realize only 25% of constituents think their tax situation was helped, and that the finances, according to the Q poll, was helped compared to last year.
That makes sense.
So that being the case, that didn't really work. as a potent weapon for Rick Saccone to run on in PA 18, Steve Ratner, also on Morning Joe, had a really interesting graph here. Ad selling tax reform swiftly dwindled from 65% to 0% as Republicans realized that voters weren't buying it. So they pulled those ads off the air.
Yes. Right.
It was all tax bill all the time. It wasn't moving the needle, according to their polls, so they stopped talking about it. And that goes along with what we talked about yesterday in terms of analyzing what happened in the Pennsylvania race. If that's not working for you, then what is supposed to work for you?
They hate God.
Yeah.
And that didn't work either.
But that didn't work. See, that's really part of the point. So let's talk a little bit. That's my segue into talking a little bit about Connor Lamb and what happened in Pennsylvania. Firstly, I want to just highlight a Bill Scher article, Why Connor Lamb Probably Won, Lessons from the Pennsylvania Special Election.
Cheating.
If it's too long and you didn't read it, getting your candidate to fit the district is a really good idea. I'm highlighting what may seem obvious. It wasn't obvious at the time, but Bill Scher is the first guy who picked out that Donald Trump was running as the cultural warrior president. Didn't really care much about policy at all. Didn't know policy, didn't care about policy. All he cared about is that I'm on your side and we're going to beat the libtards. And that is all he has to sell. And so now you take that back to this particular district, which is, cultural conservative. Don't forget, it's part of Appalachia.
Yes.
And it still was the case. There's the music.
Yes.
It still was the case that Lamb won, and we'll talk about one on the other side of the break.
Okay. Well, that's probably a good thing to say for the other side of the break. Lamb won because there was huge cheating, and also because he's exactly like me, which I'm not certain whether that says anything about how I won. But if it does, it's wrong and a lie. I'll be right back in 45 minutes. Hi, it's me, David Waldman, your host for Kagro in the Morning, interrupting this little break to say thanks so much to all of you who are contributing supporters of Kagro in the Morning. Thousands of you are downloading the show each day, but fewer than 1 in 25 regular listeners are donating to help keep us on the air. For the money you'd spend on a single 3-minute iTunes song, we bring you 2 hours of great news and entertainment every day, 5 days a week. Patreon.com, Patreon.com makes it easy. You can find us there by searching KagroX or David Waldman or Kagro in the Morning or even Daily Coast Radio in their search box, and you'll be right where you need to be to make easy, recurring, monthly contributions to support our show. Once again, thanks so much for your support. Welcome back to the Kagro in the Morning show. In fact, it's the Kagro in the afternoon, Kagro all day long show, and it's not even Kagro. It's the King of America. I don't even want to report. Why are we reporting on facts? What would even be the purpose? Okay, well, we'll pretend that we'll one day be rid of this guy and continue on with the facts. When we left off, we were trying to figure out or trying to listen to. Were we still talking about Bill Scher?
Yeah, we were.
Explaining why Connor Lamb won, and the answer is because people like true stuff more than fake stuff.
So the idea was that Connor Lamb is just like Donald Trump because Donald Trump said so.
Right.
And whereas during the run-up to the election, he was a liberal who would support Nancy Pelosi as soon as he won, he only won because he was a Republican.
Right.
I mean, you can't make up stuff about what Republicans say because it's just so outrageous that it's true.
You're going to look lame by comparison trying to make up something dumb for them to say.
Yeah, because they just go ahead and say it before you can even get that far. So Scher points out the populist wing of the Democratic Party he's talking about. That's Democratic Party, not Democrat Party. The populist wing can point to Lamb's unapologetic defense of Social Security Medicare from Speaker Paul Ryan's long-standing goal of cost-saving entitlement reform, and that's in scare quotes as it should be. In a district full of working-class people, Lamb pledged to defend union rights, while Saccone had a record of support for anti-union right-to-work laws. That was probably the single most important thing that won Lamb the election. In an election that close, there's a lot of Republicans from the area who said any other Republican would have won, but the unions hated Saccone. He was obnoxious about it. and they really rallied behind Lamb, and in this case, economics overcame culture, which is where I was going when I wanted to read this piece.
Ah, okay.
Because sometimes, in fact, it is economic anxiety, sometimes. And it trumped the culture war president that Trump was trying to be. Remember, this is Appalachia, and the culture war won. In other words, Conor Lamb winning this race is like Conor Lamb winning this race in West Virginia. That's the way you have to think about it.
I will force myself to do that.
Because they're similar areas. Trump arguably levied, except that we had the Allegheny parts of Pittsburgh suburbs, so it's not quite like that, and that's how he was able to pull it off. Trump arguably levied tariffs on steel last week, in part to help Saccone with the district's Pittsburgh area workers. But Lamb celebrated the new tax barriers, as have other protectionists on the left, and thinking of Ohio, Democratic senators, for example. He rejected Trump's tax reform as a giveaway to the rich.
Yes.
And one ad touted Lamb as an antidote to a Congress that cares more about the corporations and the wealthy than the normal people. So it isn't just that Saccone was running on a very unpopular tax plan from the Republicans. It isn't going to save them. Lamb ran against it. That also helped him.
All right.
So no, Donald Trump, he's not you. Except in one sense. Okay? Lamb didn't campaign on the left's policy plank of a single-payer health insurance, and he actually followed the advice of the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee's cautious healthcare polling memo, which said the American people want Congress to improve the Affordable Care Act, not repeal it or replace it with something radically different. Okay? And there was a lot of criticism from the DCCC, from DCCC for saying that, but it actually worked in that district. He also stayed away from $15 minimum wage. He said he talked to people in the area, and it's too high for us in this area. Okay. He split the baby with gun control. He has an AR-15. He knows how to use it. He's a Marine. But he wants universal background checks, and he's very much for that.
All right. Well,
so
that is a fact.
The point is that when Trump tried to use cultural warrior things here, Lamb said, "Oh, I'm okay. I'm fine for that. I don't like Nancy Pelosi. I like tariffs. I'm fine with keeping your AR-15. I think your tax bill is all for the 1%, and I'm a union guy." And that happened to fit the district, and he won. And there's nothing wrong with that. You got to have a candidate who's willing to go in your district. Nina Turner wouldn't have won here. You can't go in here and say, okay, I'm for all of these things and I want them now. And I'm going to be strident about it. And I'm not really interested in what you have to say about it. That doesn't work here. So if you want to win districts like this is what you have to do. Are you prepared to do that? And I think the overwhelming answer for Democrats having lost is yes. Had the Democrats won a narrow presidential election, I suspect the answer would have been no. But we lost, and so I think the answer is probably going to be yes. Lamb wasn't primary.
No. Wasn't he? Well, okay. I at that point, I'm sure everyone wanted to jump out of the way. I don't want to be the sacrificial lamb. Oh, my God. I didn't even think about that until just now. Okay.
Coming up, isn't it?
Well, all right.
We're soon at the time of peeps and macaroons. I'm just saying.
Yes.
But, just for today, remember, it's the Ides of March, so don't get ahead of your skis, as they like to say in Stormy Daniels' world.
Really?
What the lawyer says all the time.
Oh, okay. I mean,
do you have sex tapes? Well, let's not get ahead of our skis here.
Okay. I don't think that one's what they've got. I don't know that he really wants tape, but I do think he wants to send pictures.
He said, "I'm not commenting on it."
Yeah.
Supposedly, the interview will be Sunday.
Okay.
And he also claimed yesterday that there's other women who are coming to him who are interested in coming forward.
All right. Well,
so this thing isn't going away. Oh, and by the way,
exciting.
There are now two Trump attorneys associated with Trump Org that worked on this quashing Stormy Daniels NDA sort of thing, and wrote letters on behalf of trying to shut Stormy Daniels up from Trump Organization email addresses.
Yes.
So there's at least 2 lawyers from the organization that have done this. So it becomes harder and harder to move away from that. So it's fascinating because here you have Pennsylvania 18, and Trump is trying to run on cultural issues but not policy. And Connor Lamb deftly stepped around some of the policy landmines that are always there because obviously as a country and Democrats as a party are not in unanimity on anything. And yet the thing that keeps coming back to haunt Trump is this Stormy Daniels things, way more than policy, and also, by the way, his personnel issues in the White House with the Russia probe underneath everything and him getting ready to rearrange the cabinet for a variety of reasons. One of them, of course, is considering getting rid of Jeff Sessions so he can get rid of Mueller. And the other, as our friend Dana Hull pointed out, is that if you get rid of all the independent cabinet-minded people and fill it with loyalists, then they're less likely to invoke the 25th Amendment.
Yes, I did see his tweet saying that he hadn't seen it pointed out anywhere.
Well, now he has.
That's because
he pointed it out.
Yeah, well, he hasn't seen it pointed out because I said it verbally on the show for 2 days in a row before he tweeted it. But I didn't write it down. That's the downfall of this show.
That's the thing, right? You got to write these things down. Otherwise, they're ephemeral.
Right.
So there's that. Another thing that's coming up today as well, and again, politics is complicated. People don't think ideologically when they vote. Activists think ideologically when they try to position the party to be in a certain place. But it's far more messy than that on the ground, and I was just trying to point that out with Pennsylvania 18. Here's another area where it comes up. There was the banking bill from yesterday.
Yes.
Right?
Joan told us about that, yeah.
So I didn't have a chance to listen to Joan's excellent segment. I know it was excellent because she's always excellent. But this is an AP story from today. Banking bill brings out Schumer's messy midterm strategy.
Okay.
Which is the point that I was making to you on the show yesterday. Leaders have to listen to their caucus. They don't tell their caucus what to do.
Right.
And Schumer was not telling his caucus what to do. He was listening to his caucus. He voiced opposition to the bill, but he didn't pull it, demand it be pulled, try to line up Democrats to vote against it. I guess Michigan Democrats are under pressure from smaller banks to vote for it. Yeah, and apparently. So Schumer let that happen. And one of the observation was from a former leader, Harry Reid, Jim Manley, who used to work for Reid, had a comment about it. The outcome this week, though messy, could allow all sides to claim wins. Liberals take a populist stand that revs up the base, and moderates strike a bipartisan compromise for their home states. He's dealing with this little internecine war as good as can be expected, said Jim Manley, a former top Reid aide. That's an integral part of the playbook. Sometimes a good leader knows there are different ways for members to claim victory. So you may let yourself look bad if it turns out you are protecting your members.
Yes.
And you just have to take it.
And in return, well, we've mentioned this on the air a number of times, but it always bears repeating. In return, the members are grateful to you. They know very well that you're out there taking lumps to give them cover, and so they tend to come back and support you and reelect you as leader and say, yeah, I like the leadership style where he listens to what we are up against and takes that into account rather than issuing marching orders to us. That's the guy we want to win again the second time. And people who spend their time saying the leadership ought to be whipping people into line and issuing marching orders so as to keep the caucus unified, those guys don't get votes in leadership races. And the first test of unifying the caucus is how many of you think this guy should be the leader and how many of you think that guy should be the leader. And the most unifying answer is we like the one who lets us not be unified.
Right, to a certain extent. So I think a lot of that is true. There's some other interesting pieces here about Pennsylvania. Did Trump's visit stave off a rout in Pennsylvania? In other words, another thing that he's claiming, besides the fact that Connor Lamb is a Republican, obviously he's not, is that because of him, he changed a 5-point deficit to a tie, and therefore all credit to Trump.
Right,
Great. Philip Bump has a piece saying, well, that's not actually what happened.
Oh, So, who cares?
Yeah, so who cares? Greg Sargent has an interesting piece. 3 big takeaways from Trump's humiliating Pennsylvania failure. The House map got a little broader. We talked about the fact that there's 100 more competitive seats compared to PA 18.
A little broader.
The Trump GOP agenda may be a big albatross for Republicans. We talked about that. And then also Democrats can do better among blue-collar whites. And again, as you know, this has been an interest of mine. In his speech to supporters last night, Lamb stressed the importance of organized labor to the future of the Democratic Party, spoke up for the value of unions and work, and emphasized the importance of maintaining bedrock programs such as Medicare and Social Security. He also campaigned against the GOP tax cuts as a giveaway to the rich and blasted the tax cuts for creating deficits that would require deep cuts to entitlements, harming the middle class. Okay? So, yeah, Greg Sargent says, Lamb's qualities as a candidate were important, but is also this. Now, my point is that I've always thought that there is some small segment of Trump voters who are persuadable to vote for Democrats, not the core, not the rally voters, not the nutcases, but obviously in PA 18, there were such voters. You might look at them as the white suburban voters in the Pittsburgh area, or you could look at them as the union voters in the other areas of this particular district. Now, there are 4 counties. Allegheny near Pittsburgh was a Clinton area, and Connor Lamb did quite well there. And, turnout was up compared to previous midterms, or you can't compare to specials because there aren't that many specials. But the turnout was very good. And then there were 3 red counties. And those red counties, the votes went for Saccone, but Connor Lamb did 7 or 8 points better in those counties than Donald Trump did. And the combination of stealing some votes from Trump because of those persuadable Trump voters in those red counties and getting a lot out of your Clinton area Allegheny blue votes was enough for him to win. And so there are Trump voters who can be persuaded to vote for Democrats. And this is a great roadmap of how to do it, because if you're emphasizing labor issues, if you're emphasizing the 1%, if you're emphasizing the GOP tax cuts as being a ripoff, and if you're emphasizing preserving Social Security and Medicare, then you are talking to white working class voters without throwing everybody else in your base under the bus. And that is not a bad way to go.
That does sound like a good middle path. Yes. Let's do that.
Right? So, I mean, well, why are you talking to Trump voters? You're deserting? No, we're not. You want this too.
There were definitely some of all sorts. I imagine there was also some perhaps increased turnout among either Democrats or the democratically sympathetic who
there were,
might
but
sit
that wasn't
out
enough.
red
You
elections.
had to have converted Trump voters as well.
And there were definitely some of those. I saw an interview with this guy who was the mayor of one of the towns out in the red part of the district who had voted for Trump and said, but came out in an interview. He's a rather elderly fellow, but I can't remember exactly which town he is the mayor of. But he said, yeah, I voted for Trump, and I'm going to vote for Lamb in this one. I don't vote for parties. I vote for the best candidate, et cetera. Well, but you were a Trump voter. That's not really true. I mean, you might not have done it because of the R label, but you didn't vote for the best candidate. I know that.
Now, we don't have enough data for sure to really know this, and Sargent is careful to point this out. Depressed turnout among Trump voters might have been a factor in Lamb's apparent victory. In other words, he may not have persuaded people who used to vote for Trump to vote for him. He may have persuaded
one guy,
depressed Trump voters to stay home in larger numbers.
Also possible.
But that's all part of the mix. If you want to win an election, there's a GOTV. You want to get out your vote. You want to KOTV, keep out the vote. You want their people to stay home. That's okay. If you can't vote for me, at least stay home.
Yeah. I didn't see that was a major overt part of his campaign, but
I'm saying if that's the way it worked out in the end, that's okay.
If it grows out of a campaign that is ostensibly anyway aimed at increasing turnout among persuadables, whatever you might think they are, then fine. So it's okay. A good ancillary benefit is it depresses people who are who vote for idiots. Oh, there's no idiot on the ballot that I
Right.
can support, except for this one who says the other side hates God. Forget it.
So here's Matthew Dowd's big picture look at this. It was a very solid GOP district, but after the results of last night were in, the number of vulnerable GOP incumbents went from 50 to 100. President Trump's national approval rating is 39%, and that means loss of not only many GOP seats in Congress, but governor races and down-ballot offices, including state legislative seats.
Good, we need it.
The GOP should prepare for a large blue wave coming at them in November. Also, House Speaker Paul Ryan, Fox News, and other commenters on cable have stated falsely that Connor Lamb, who appears to have a narrow advantage over Saccone, is really a Republican. He isn't.
Yeah. Well,
Okay,
that's like
he
the old
points out
Fox
why.
News trick.
He gives them anything. Third, because of President Trump's dismal approval ratings, this is a major anchor weighting GOP candidates down around the country. Okay.
Good.
A year ago, Matthew Dowd writes, I suggested the best strategy for the GOP to try to stem their losses, take on the president, and hold him accountable for his words and actions. The GOP has done exact opposite. They've underperformed or lost nearly every race, and it's probably too late for them now to change. I thought that was an interesting observation. You may want to run away from Trump. You can't now. Too bad.
I don't
Sorry.
know that it wouldn't
not
have
happening.
been worse had they tried his theory, but it's a good observation that nothing has worked for them.
Fourth, after the 2016 elections, GOP leaders talked about the fact they're going to pick up a net of 3 or 4 seats down. Looks like a fleeting pipe dream. There's lots of vulnerable Democrats, but in a wave, a wave is a wave.
Right.
Fifth,
No, it isn't.
there's been much talk that Democrats need more than just an anti-Trump strategy to win, and that they need some broad economic argument to convince voters to support them. I just outlined one.
Ah, okay.
Support workers.
I like the part where you talked about some broad.
Yeah,
That was
that
good.
is that was a dark and stormy night, but that was another segment. This is only true in part, says Dowd. Democrats need to enunciate a message that'll hold Trump accountable. Don't run against Trump because you hate him, but because you care about the institutions in Washington that won't serve the needs of all Americans. Hey, he's talking like me. Shared values, rule of law. Be honest, that kind of thing. They need to couple this with a message of restoring American values again in Washington and looking out for the local communities they represent. It's as simple as that. Overly complicating the message with a long platform of issue positions will only dilute a fairly clear and concise message. Now, he says, I gave up predicting exactly what will happen after my wrong prediction in 2016.
Oh, really?
I will say this, a large wave is building, and the only question is how big it is, if the GOP has a capacity to build a big enough wall to repel the wave, and so far, GOP leaders have had no desire to confront an unpopular president, and while that short-sighted strategy may help them in primaries, it hurts them badly in the general elections ahead. So that's how the overall big picture looks. There really is a wave, and they're not prepared for it, as we said.
Yes.
We even gave you specifics. We even gave you names. We named names.
That's true. The part I did not like about Dowd is he told Republicans that they should prepare for this wave. And I do not think that they should. I think that they should just let it happen to them. Don't try to mitigate it in any way.
You know who else did the same thing?
Tom
Davis.
Tom Davis. Oh.
Yeah. Tom Davis
Usually
was
the answer to
invited
that
to
is
talk to
Hitler.
them, and he did, and he told me the exact same thing. And he was interviewed the other day on Chuck Todd, and Todd said, what do you think? And Davis said, it's too late. I mean, this stuff is baked in now. You can't run away from him. It's done.
True. And Chuck
And
Todd
Tom
was awake
Davis
the
is
whole
a pretty
time.
smart guy. I like, he's not in the business anymore.
Right.
He
That's
only
what
went
makes him
because
so
they
smart.
asked him to. But he's been pretty honest about his assessment. And he says, no, wave. Too late.
Yeah. Okay. Well, he and Jolly, the two of them, don't have work in the business anymore, and now they can see it clearly.
Right. Now,
Okay.
here's an interesting one. Because
We're going to make a lot of pundits this year.
Yeah. There's this whole thing about, but Connor Lamb won because he was running against Nancy Pelosi.
Oh. Well, she's from the other side of the country.
Yeah. So, but this is an interesting piece by Mike Allen, for a change, in Axios today.
Okay.
Okay. Thought I'd get your thoughts on it. The big picture, Connor Lamb won his U.S. race after saying he wouldn't vote for her for leader, which is now a new template for moderates. Pelosi is hung in through the minority, remains the party's most consistent fundraiser, As for whether she'll return as Speaker, she said it's up to the members.
Okay.
But others have had their eye on the gavel. And many members want a younger, newer face. So number 2, Steny Hoyer is 78. Covers the job, but he's 3 months older than she is. I think that, maybe they should ask the millennials in the party about this. Joe Biden, Elizabeth Warren, Bernie. Get some younger blood in there to weigh in on whether Steny should do this or not. That's my own personal opinion.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Pelosi is more likely to be the bridge to a younger generation. A possible successor who works the caucus behind the scenes is Joe Crowley of Queens, who turns 56 tomorrow, which this article points out is incredibly young by congressional standards. It's just a baby.
I guess so.
He's only 56.
But
I mean, look at the other people I just mentioned as Democratic leaders. Among possible candidates who are getting buzz also, Adam Schiff, with a very high profile after House Intelligence. And one Democratic source told me Pelosi hears footsteps. She used to be retributional. Now she's more inclusive. Allies see some of the criticism as sexist and say she's always been inclusive. But Trump plans to invoke her frequently in the midterms. And one scenario presented from a Pelosi ally, she could win the caucus vote for Speaker and then lose the floor vote. I don't see how that works, but maybe you.
Well, I mean, technically that's true, but then technically I could be the Speaker of the House, and I'm not.
Do they mean that she gets the majority of the caucus vote, but doesn't get the exact number of votes she needs on the floor? Is that what they're talking about?
Yeah, they're talking about winning a majority of the caucus vote for should we nominate Nancy Pelosi to be Speaker of the House, and then going to the floor and having all the Republicans vote against her and enough Democrats voting against her or for some other candidate that she doesn't garner a majority, and then however that works itself out, she doesn't end up Speaker of the House. That's a long shot. And the one point in time where they will absolutely break your legs for not getting in line with the party is on that vote.
That's an important one.
Though people do vote the other way and they make allowances for it, they count it first. And if they say, if I have 218 yeses, I will let you go. If I have 215 yeses and you vote no, 1, I'm going to engineer a way to become Speaker of the House anyway, and 2, then you'll see retributional Nancy Pelosi.
That's where you see it, exactly. So, but these are just interesting quotes because I think they point out the dilemma. This is not them in disarray. It's just an interesting decision that the caucus would have to make. The quote is, she's the best vote counter this generation has ever seen. Okay. Professional tip. That's one of the reasons why she's a good speaker.
Yeah. One of the things you need to become speaker is a certain number of votes.
Right. So. She's the best vote counter this generation has ever seen. She'll know the scenario well in advance and will figure out a way that will preserve her legacy. She'd never let a failed floor vote happen. She'd just bow out to somebody else.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and don't forget, it isn't just a question of lining up the votes and counting the votes to see whether or not you got the votes for Speaker. This is the situation. I'm just, I'm telling my audience what David Waldman has taught me. This is where the Speaker says, I need 218 votes. I have 223. You 4 people there get a pass and can vote no. Yes. And then be right and win your vote.
Yeah.
That is a talent. Not everybody has it. She does it better than anybody maybe in history.
Yeah, and it's pretty straightforward, and I am continually astonished that the Republicans have not been able to figure this out. They cannot.
Well, just to show you how hard it is, they can't do it.
Yeah, well, which doesn't tell you very much, to be honest. I mean, these are numbers.
I know, but we take it for granted. Of course this is going to happen. It's not taken for granted.
Yeah.
It takes somebody with actual talent to go do this. It's like Michael Jordan playing basketball. He makes it look so easy. Yeah, you try it.
Yeah, that's true. Well, you have to practice a lot in order to make it right.
Right. Also stick your tongue out. I don't know if you know this, but Michael Jordan always plays with his tongue out.
I've noticed that. I didn't really think that was essential to it, but I did read an article today about why cats stick their tongues out.
Yeah, I saw that. But it's all about sex. We're not going to cover that because that makes certain people squeamish, and it's a family-oriented show. So
I want to. Wait a minute. Did you? Don't just turn this topic off. Hold on a second. All right. Okay. Well, we'll leave it for
well, while I finish this one, you can go look it up so you're ready for later. So be smart. If there's a post-election coup against Pelosi, Crowley is the likely winner because Schiff and the others would scramble the field, and Joe, everybody likes Joe.
Really?
Yeah. So this says all the factions are finding him acceptable.
All right. Well, we'll keep an eye on him.
Knowing them says, my guess is Crowley's the next speaker. He's a fresh face that the majority of the caucus yearns for, and a spring chicken by congressional standards because he's only 55.
Okay, sure. Fine. Whatever. I don't think so.
You heard it here first.
He's not a spring chicken. It may be. Look, if people think that, I don't know. I don't know who they would turn to. I mean, in the absence of Pelosi, anything could happen, I guess.
That is really the point of doing that. Okay, so fine, not Crowley. But who?
Yeah,
Steny?
Me.
No.
Okay. The Kennedy guy they put on TV the other day.
A little young. Can he count votes? We don't know.
He's a spring, he's an egg. Let's just
it's not even a
put
chicken.
him on there. That's going to be great.
Not even a chicken. Not even a peep.
It's like it's like nominating people to the Supreme Court. We should have a 40-year-old.
Twitter, we had a ton of eggs we could have nominated because we had all these eggs.
Right. Like we should nominate a Twitter egg. Why not?
Why not?
Okay. Thanks very much.
It's interesting. And by the way, what I just described to you is not disarray. It's actually an orderly transition.
Yes, until you have your nominee, you don't know exactly what it's going to be, and it's a little bit messy. Then you impose order on the situation.
So the practical aspect of this is in the run-up to the November election. Remember, don't hatchet your counts before they chicken.
Right.
The whole idea is wait and see what happens, but, don't sweat it. They'll decide what they want to do, and they'll figure out what to do after that.
All right. We'll allow for that. Thanks very much, Greg.
I won't be back after the break, but we'll see you Monday. Bye.
All right. Take care. Thanks again. That was Greg Dworkin talking with his friend David Wildman. He usually says before he leaves.
But I didn't have time.
Right. Okay. We got it in. We'll talk to you again next week. Have a good weekend. Welcome back to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. We're just, I'm checking out pictures of Joe Crowley to see whether he looks chickeny enough. Is he enough of a spring chicken to get by on it? Is he a fresh face? And well, all right, if you just take it for what it's worth, the idea of spring chicken by congressional standards, I mean, that's a pretty broad brush there by congressional standards. So I guess it flies. He's got a very, pleasant smile in his picture and everything. But he's a big, older, bald white guy. And that's so fresh, that face. I can't even express my excitement. Now, being from Queens, I imagine he's let's say, a gregarious and energetic fellow, and apparently lots of people would find him acceptable. And sure, why not? He's in leadership now. He's the chair of the House Democratic Conference, although we usually say caucus, and I wonder whether that's a typo, or do we call the House Conference? That's, I don't know. Anyway, that's Wikipedia, so who knows whether they have that right or not. And like I said, I'm sure he's a very popular guy. Steny Hoyer, I feel a little bit bad for Steny Hoyer in the sense that he probably felt like he deserved to rise to the apex of Democratic leadership in the Congress. And certainly he put the time in, and he was a leader in his state legislature, and he's sort of always risen to the top. And really, he's been at the top. He hasn't occupied the very top spot among House Democrats, true, but he's been at the very near to the top of leadership since forever, and a career well done, and you can just relax about that. And, okay, your big regret is he never won the big one. That's fine, but you're a Hall of Famer, and you can, take that with you into retirement, and it's just not likely that the gavel falls to you. You certainly shouldn't pursue it if it's going to be a divisive fight, and I don't think, quite honestly, I don't think he does that. I think he goes out gracefully, And we'll see. I mean, I don't think it's going to be necessary, but certainly I think good point there that Pelosi would likely do the same rather than do something that could put the party, to really hinder the ability of Democrats to regain control of government after a big wave election. So I have my doubts about whether or not there would be a big mess. I have my doubts about whether Crowley occupies the top spot. By the way, Joseph Crowley, not to be confused with Mr. Crowley from the Ozzy Osbourne album, but I didn't think anybody was going to make that mistake anytime soon. Anyway, but it comes to mind every once in a while as I think about him, and now I always think of him as Mr. Crowley and start singing the few words of the song that I actually know in my head every time his name is mentioned. All right. What do we even do with the rest of this day? Well, let's check in, first of all, on what the hell is going on elsewhere and other comments that people have sent along the way. It hasn't been a big comment day here, although the Warlock was asking right up at the top of the show, why are Dems not calling out Trump for his trade with Canada lie? And I did it, I don't know, for a long time. But I'm not a big Dem, and I'm no Mr. Crowley or Steny Hoyer, at any rate. And it was early in the day, and I don't know what elected Democrats are doing with this. They're likely waking up to this very irritating story and not sure what to do with it. Trump has tweeted on it since this morning, and I guess do I bother with the fact-checking? I mean, there's some very nice fact-checking answers out there. Trump tweets, we do have a trade deficit with Canada, as we do, or should we say it like him, as we do with almost all countries, some of them massive. I love it. He means the trade deficits, I think, not the countries being massive. But you never know. A major country, major country, with whom, as though he knew what the word whom was, we have a major, massive trade deficit. We do have a trade deficit with Canada, he says, as we do with almost all countries, some of them massive. PM Justin Trudeau of Canada, a very good guy, he keeps coming back to that, doesn't like saying that Canada has a surplus versus the U.S., and then he puts parenthetically, negotiating. Don't know what that means. But they do. They almost all do. And that's how I know. You don't know. You're an idiot. You're making it up. You don't even remember you told us last night you make it up. Now, there's an answer here. That's quoted by Scott Lincecum, I'm guessing is how he says this one. He is a trade lawyer, and it also says Cato Institute and Duke Law adjunct. I don't know how popular that's going to make him among the listenership. Trade lawyer. Oh, really? Okay, he might know what he's talking about. Cato Institute. They're libertarians. Oh, I don't know about that. Duke! Oh, my God. This is like the worst day to be mentioning Duke, too. I told you it was Tournament Thursday. Anyway, he says this, Scott does. 2018 economic report of the president, which the president signed. Maybe I bring that up as a possibility that he did not sign it. Or that he signed it and he has no idea what it is. That's tops on the charts in terms of likelihood. But there's a real likelihood that he didn't sign it either. They just fired the guy the other day and then hired him on the campaign, whose big claim to fame was he was the best at forging the president's signatures. But okay, the president purports to have signed the 2018 economic report of the president, which is because it's his report. He had nothing to do with it. He doesn't know what's in it. He might not have signed it. All that aside, it says all countries show a services surplus offsetting a goods deficit, with the U.S. running a net bilateral surplus only with Canada and the United Kingdom. So there's only two countries, I guess, with which the United States runs a trade surplus. And Trump says we don't. And he says down at the bottom here, they all do. All other countries run a trade surplus with us. That is to say, we have a deficit with them. They all do. They almost all do. And that's how I know. And he's right. They almost all do, but two don't. and one of them's Canada, which is massive, by the way. It is. It's a very big country. And he's got it wrong. And I mean, I don't know how you forget this. They both speak English. They're both close allies. They are, I mean, if you're taking a stab at random in the world for a country that might actually do something the same way as the United States, Canada and the UK are the places you're going to land, not at random, but if you have any brains in your head whatsoever. So, of course, Donald Trump goes the opposite way. They're totally wrong. You're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong. I know that you're wrong. I know that you're wrong. How do I know that you're wrong? You signed a report that said you were wrong. What? Who? Where? Why? Oh, that's full of some guy gave it to me. I don't even know. So, whatever. Do we fact check him? No, I'm not fact checking him. That's useless. I'm just saying he's stupid and a liar. And here's another example of it. And if you don't believe me, then here's some facts. Fine. Now do you believe me? No, you don't, because you're unpersuadable. Terrific. Okay. Moving along. Some other comments made along the way. Let's see. What have we here? Let's take a quick look. Oh, our friend S. Zorowitz, who now tweets as president for life, says, but if a liar says he's lying, does not compute. Danger, warning. True. I know that is a difficulty. But he's so bad at it that we can just take away from it. Yeah, okay, I get it. He's lying about everything. All right. Let's see. What is this? All right. Another ongoing gun discussion that's happening elsewhere, so I'll put that one aside. You know what? I didn't bring up yesterday. I guess it's time for like the lightning round of everything today. Oh, yeah, so look at this. Hold on a second. Time out for a metal update from Chief Beef Loco. Dude, this has legend Randy Rhoads. Rest in peace. Yes, that's true. He was from Burbank and used to smoke doobies down at Burbank Park. Did you know that Barbara Bush, rolling on the floor laughing. Okay, good point. Very true. I can't play the song it's a callback to the Mr. Crowley and the entire Blizzard of Oz album. Yes. Guitar legend Randy Rhoads playing on that one. Did I know that he used to smoke doobies down at Burbank Park? Didn't know it was Burbank Park, but I mean, the original dirtbag left, ladies and gentlemen, Randy Rhoads and Ozzy Osbourne. Okay, so moving on, as one does. What the hell's going on today? Something I didn't tell you about yesterday, but which is important to one of my other projects. Of course, the gun fail lists. There's lots of crossover between the radio show and gun fail. I don't know if I put them aside in pocket, but I might as well tell you. I can tell you off the top of my head. In the middle of the big debate, once again, the middle of the big debate about should we be arming teachers, should we have more school resource officers, more cops in schools. I got a lot of objections, by the way, to even using the terminology school resource officer. People very honestly and truly say, look, the resource that these school officers make use of is violence or the threat of it. And you might as well just say they're cops. What's the point of saying school resource officer? And I get the point. I don't know. That's the terminology that comes with it. And I was really looking to make a very narrow point and not get into a discussion of what's the name by which we refer to the officer. But you're right. I mean, and it's foolish to say that they're not cops. You can't disagree. They're in uniform and they are cops. So whatever. They want to call them school resource officer. The issue is the same. They're carrying guns. Well, my issue in it is they're carrying guns around in the school. And they fire those guns with, I mean, most of them don't, but with some regularity in the sense that, once a year, twice a year, you have these things happen because there's a lot of guns floating around. That's always been my point with gun fail. The more guns there are floating around, the more accidents there will be with them. The more time they spend floating around in schools, the more accidents there will be with them in schools. So that's just, I don't know what to tell you. That's just reality. And so right in the middle of the big debate, two good guys with guns only one of whom was a school resource officer, per se. But 2 good guys with guns in schools on Tuesday, same day, accidentally discharged their weapons in the schools they were in. Now, the first one was a school resource officer in Alexandria, Virginia's, I believe, George Washington Middle School. And just, I don't even know what the details necessarily of it are. Maybe there are more that have been developed since Tuesday, the initial reports. Walking down the hall and just, I don't know what happened. And he discharged the weapon. No one hurt, thankfully, in that one. The second was in Seaside, California, at Seaside High School. Believe it or not, they're very creatively named. I like it when you name the high school after the town. That's nice. It makes things simple. And there, we are talking about I don't know. He's everything. He's like a city councilman. He's a teacher. He is a retired cop. He's a little bit of every bit of the responsible type person that we would want to be a responsible gun owner. What was he doing with his gun in a school in California? Big question mark. He's teaching, but they don't have armed teachers. They don't allow armed teachers in California yet. But they do have occasionally exceptions for law enforcement officers to carry their weapons in school, whether they're assigned there as school resource officers or come in from the outside or whatever. That's the exception. You can carry your gun in a school zone if you are a law enforcement officer. It is not clear that he qualifies as such, though I think he's a retired or former police officer. Maybe he's a reserve police officer. I don't know. I don't know what his excuse was, but the point is he fired his gun accidentally in class with students, and people were hurt. There were 3 students injured. None of them shot directly by the weapon. He fired it up into the ceiling. Bullet fragments and debris from the ceiling injured 3 students because he accidentally fired his gun. Mr. Safety. He was there, by the way, speaking about public safety. What caused him to say, the thing about public safety is let me illustrate this point by drawing a pistol and pointing it at the ceiling. Kablam! I don't know what kind of demonstration that was supposed to be. You know what's really not good for public safety? Waving guns around in classrooms like so. Oh, God, I didn't really even think that was going to happen, but thank you for making my point. Professor, teacher, professor. He's not a professor. Nobody calls their teacher. Mr. So-and-so, whatever. Mr. Councilman, my neck, I'm bleeding. Bullet fragments. Exactly my point. If that hadn't happened, I wouldn't have been able to illustrate this point so clearly. I don't know. I'm going to lapse into Trump on this because it's such a dumb thing to do. I'll grab you the articles about that. Oh, no, I won't. I'll probably forget. Scott, if I forget, remind me. I have them close at hand. They're not in pocket, though. Seaside, California, Alexandria, Virginia, twice in the same day, and you should expect more and more every day. I think, strictly speaking, if you're talking about school resource officers, so designated, only, not even police officers making a one-time visit to the class to teach them about don't do drugs or whatever. School resource officers who have actually accidentally fired the weapon on school grounds. I think we're up to about 5 of those that I've collected over the years, and that would be since early 2013. So going on, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, right? So 6 years now. That's not a lot. That's true. But there aren't school resource officers in every school. They're talking about having that. They're talking about having more than that. And they're talking about arming teachers too. You're talking about probably, I guess, effectively, a lot of teachers are not going to opt to carry, even if they're given the opportunity to do so. So, I don't know, conservatively, let's say you're going to quadruple the number of guns floating around in the schools. So it's been 2013, 14, 15. I'm going to double check my counting here. Use my fingers on this. I'll skip my trigger finger. You don't want that on there. 2013, 14, 15, 16, 17. Now into 18. So we're in our 6th year, very early in our 6th year. So about once a year. Which is, again, it's not a lot, but if you quadruple the number, quintuple the number, whatever there's a lot more teachers than there are school resource officers. Very often one, maybe two per school, and they're not in every school. There's teachers in every school. I'm pretty sure of that. Not every one of them is going to allow armed teachers. Not every teacher is going to carry. Even in schools where they allow it, 1, 2 teachers might actually feel like they're up to the task. Out in Utah, I guess everybody does, or thinks they're up to it anyway. So who knows what you're going to do? But if you quadruple that, then how are you going to feel about 4 accidental discharges by armed professionals, whether they be teachers or school resource officers or janitors, as is sometimes the case, like down in Texas? How are you going to feel about that number of accidental discharges? We're not getting that number of school shootings that are of the type that people who advocate for armed teachers think teachers would be able to intervene in and mitigate. So you're going to be accidentally firing your guns more frequently than you expect to see somebody turning up at a school whom you would support such a teacher shooting at. Not that the teacher would necessarily draw the gun and pull the trigger, because there's a lot that goes in between the intention and the actual execution of this thing. And of course, if it turns out you're having 10 times the number of guns floating around, 20 times the number of guns floating around, forget it. You're gonna end up shooting people real quick. But again, that's just the strictest possible interpretation. It was only school resource officers and only those officers who had actually discharged the weapon on school grounds. If you count other incidents like leaving your gun loaded accidentally in the bathroom, whether it be a faculty bathroom or a bathroom where kids find it, then you have several more of those. If you are talking about private security guards or college campus police accidentally discharging on college campuses, the number goes up even further. I would say we're probably closer to 15 or so such incidents if you include all of that. And we're probably about a dozen of those would include actual discharges, and several of them include actually hitting students, by the way, including one of my true favorite stories of the University of Florida's private security guard patrolling student housing and accidentally shooting a sleeping student through the wall of his apartment, which is fairly amazing, and equally amazing that people just don't remember that even happened. But it did. And by the way, the gunshine state has had a unique problem with all of that. The reason the gunshine state didn't already allow armed students on campus much earlier than they finally came around to it last year was that there was a very powerful Republican state legislator in the state Senate, I believe, whose good friend had his daughter accidentally shot to death by a kid goofing around with an assault rifle at a fraternity party drunk, and blew the head off of the local cheerleader. And that guy was in the Senate and said, yeah, I'm going to sort of stand in the way of this stupid idea of allowing even the oldest students with concealed carry permits or what have you, or experience in the military or police forces, to carry their weapons and keep them on campus, because dumb things happen, because dumb stuff happens on college campuses. People drink, people do irresponsible things, and there's just a lot of bodies moving around in relatively careless fashion because they're, generally speaking, young and insulated and protected from harm by being cloistered on a campus. And then add some guns to that. They're just not in the mindset to be carrying weapons or keeping them in their dorm rooms or fraternity houses. And it took a long time for Florida to get around to allowing that, over his objection, by the way, some years later, when it became sort of really popular. What was the girl's name, too? I think, if I can recall, was it Ashley Cowie? It comes to mind maybe because of the similarity to Cowley. Cowie, I think. Yes. Let me just Google that. because there's somebody of the same name. Wikipedia takes me to the wrong place and takes me instead to the Ashley Cowie, who is a Scottish historian. Do they have a disambiguation or no? I think, though, the girl's name, let's see, it was the University of Florida, right? Or was it Florida State? I can't remember. Let's put it, yeah, Florida. There we go. Google knows the answer before I finished. Ashley Cowie of Florida State. Way back in 2010. When did it actually happen? 2012? Here's the June 2012 story of the student who did it heading to prison. So we'll just to establish that this really happened for you. Florida State University student now headed to prison after accidentally shooting and killing a friend at a frat house. Evan Wilhelm will do 20 years for the shot that killed Ashley Cowie and devastated her family. He was at least this honest about it. What happened is my fault entirely, Wilhelm said. And he was right about that. And so 20 years. So, I mean, I'm glad they took it seriously. The incident happened back in January of 2011, as it says. Wilhelm is accused of accidentally shooting and killing Cowie at an FSU fraternity house back in January of 2011. He told police he was showing off a new light atop his semi-automatic rifle. What kind of rifle do you believe that was? When it went off. It just did. It just went off. And remember, this is also great commentary for the whole question of should I be reporting these things as accidents or negligence or what have you. And as I said, there's big overlap between the gun enthusiasts and the gun opponents in saying, well, there's no such thing as an accidental discharge. You should refer to it as negligence, except that I think that gun nuts just say, I just won't be negligent and everything will be fine. You've heard me make the argument before. And but when something does happen, they sure move quick right back to, golly, the gun went off. Now, I'm not saying that the writer of this piece is necessarily a gun enthusiast, but gun enthusiasts are very much relieved when they're allowed to report things this way. And you might argue that that's the same with pointing out that it's an accident. However, I think that if the reporting points out that it's an accident and it's an incredibly stupid one, and it could happen to you if you have a gun, no matter what kind of ninja you think you are, it can happen to you because accidents happen to everybody, and you ought to own up to that and be realistic about the fact that you will one day likely have an accident if you carry your gun around in enough dumb situations. Anyway, that's the background on that one. So remember the name because hardly anybody else does, and that's probably really troubling to her family. And you might as well remember this guy and his story too. Although I guess you could probably forget his name, unless he's going to testify to the correctness of the message I'm trying to deliver with the gun field things. And if he's not, we don't want to hear from him. Okay, I'll be that biased. There's a million other things we got to get to. Though again, I am not 100% certain that there's any point in getting to anything. But a break is coming up. And we'll do a lightning round afterwards, I am sure. Let's see. Here's something that has nothing to do with politics, I don't think, at all, but is kind of interesting anyway and occupies or can occupy about 1 minute of our time. Did you believe this one? I thought this one was a wow. So from the wider world of science, because people like science, this I picked up from KTLA 5. What is that? Like a Los Angeles television station, right? Astronaut's DNA no longer matches his identical twins after years spent in space, NASA finds. That's just like, whoa, kind of a news from the science world. Maybe geneticists are not surprised by this. Maybe astronauts not surprised by this. But I'm neither one. Spending a year in space not only changes your outlook, it transforms your genes. I forgot. I would not have guessed this. Forgot about the genetic question. Preliminary results from NASA's twins study reveal that 7% of astronaut Scott Kelly's genes did not return to normal after his return to Earth 2 years ago. I guess they were already aware that being in space will change your genes. I didn't know that, but I suppose it's obvious to astronauts. But it didn't come back to normal when he returned to Earth, and I guess they were expecting that. The study looks at what happened to Kelly before, during, and after he spent 1 year aboard the International Space Station through an extensive comparison with his identical twin, Mark, who remained on Earth. rare situation. I guess NASA has learned that the formerly identical twins are no longer genetically the same. That is pretty amazing. By the way, the transformation, it says, of 7% of Scott's DNA suggests longer-term changes in genes related to at least 5 biological pathways and functions. Lots more to the article. I commend it to your reading, probably on your own time. We'll be back in 2 minutes to wrap it all up. Hi everybody, it's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Let's, how do we even approach the wealth of information that we have? Well, we first of all should probably remember we still have Friday to deal with on the show, and so there's plenty of room to cram more stuff in here. Let's see. Other items that we have not yet touched on, some of which are quick, some of which are not. Let's see. Greg mentioned that there were some new developments in the Stormy Daniels case, and there are two things, I think, growing out of that, not just that case, but that particular aspect, the new developments in that case. There's some very weird maneuverings going on. First of all, there was, as he mentioned, the revelation that a second Trump Organization lawyer being listed, I'm going to read here Rebecca Ballhaus from the Wall Street Journal, her tweet on this subject yesterday. A Trump Organization lawyer, a different one, other than Michael Cohen, I think, listed in the arbitration demand for the Michael Cohen LLC that paid $130,000 to Stormy Daniels in October of 2016, thus tying the president's company to efforts to silence the former porn star for the first time, or at least tying it directly. We all pretty much knew that, who Michael Cohen worked for at the time, but he denied that he was doing it on behalf of the company, or he denied that he was doing it on behalf of the campaign. It was just, he was doing it personally for a while himself, not even on behalf of Donald Trump personally. But that was called into question by his use of Trump Organization email. Oh my God. During the negotiations. And now a second lawyer's name has come up in this, and it leaves very little room for doubt. But there's also another sort of legal angle that developed in the last day or so. BuzzFeed, Politico is reporting on this. BuzzFeed maneuver, as they're calling it, could free Stormy Daniels to speak on Trump. And she's trying everything she can come up with, by the way. There's another story out there that I didn't put aside, that she's trying to raise money through small-ish crowdfunding type donations so that she's not beholden to one giant donor in any way. She's very political in this. And remember, she was considering running for, what was it, governor, or was it senator, to run against David Vitter after his big sex scandal that didn't cost him a goddamn thing down in Louisiana. Anyway, BuzzFeed maneuver could free Stormy Daniels to speak on Trump. She's thinking about crowdfunding the liquidated damages clause of the arbitration contract. If that's held to be binding, she would, by its terms anyway, owe Donald Trump $1 million in liquidated damages should she violate the non-disclosure agreement with respect to their relationship. So she's actually, in case she loses, she's trying to crowdfund the money. It will cover the $1 million. And apparently some people said, you should just, I don't know. I guess it was, the word got out that she had some big donors who were offering up the $1 million. But instead, she sought to crowdfund it, and she was hit with some criticism like, are you trying to just make money off of this thing now? Why don't you just sell your story to a tabloid and get the $1 million that way? Which is a possibility. But she's actually saying, I really don't want to be beholden to any one person or one news outlet or anything like that. I'd like to just tell my story and distribute the beholdenness among thousands of people and do things that way, just like a politician might or an activist might. Josh Gerstein, though, has this slightly different story. BuzzFeed maneuver could free Stormy Daniels to speak on Trump. It's in Politico, not BuzzFeed, though I'm sure BuzzFeed has written on it too. BuzzFeed, they say, may have found a legal opening to allow the porn actress Stormy Daniels, she's not a porn star anymore, that's too bad, to discuss her alleged relationship with President Donald Trump and a $130,000 payment she received, yada, yada, part of a non-disclosure agreement she's now trying to void. The same Trump attorney who brokered the deal with Daniels, Michael Cohen, filed a libel suit in January against BuzzFeed and 4 of its staffers over publication, remember this, of the so-called dossier, compiling accurate and also some, it says, inaccurate and unproven allegations about Trump's relationship with Russia. Now, BuzzFeed is using Cohen's libel suit about the dossier as a vehicle to demand that Daniels preserve all records relating to her relationship with Trump, as well as her dealings with Cohen and the payment he has acknowledged arranging in 2016. Do you get what's going on here? The article does go on and explain it a little bit here. Okay, here's his background. On Tuesday, BuzzFeed's lawyer wrote to Daniels' attorney asking that the adult film actress, whose real name is Stephanie Clifford, preserve various categories of documents. Such preservation letters are often a prelude to a subpoena. If Daniels' testimony is formally demanded in a deposition, the non-disclosure agreement would likely be no obstacle, legal experts said. That's the key here. The letter from BuzzFeed's attorney, obtained by Politico, argues that Cohen's role in paying Daniels is similar to allegations in the dossier about Cohen. The dossier alleges, among many other things, right, that Cohen met Russian legal officials and legislators in Prague. He's denied that, right? In August of 2016, in a bid to, quote, sweep under the carpet details of the relationship between Russia and Trump campaign officials like Paul Manafort and Rick Gates. Cohen has flatly denied the claim. Mr. Cohen's role in President Trump's 2016 campaign including but not limited to any payments he made or facilitated to third parties during or in connection with the campaign is therefore directly relevant to Cohen's suit, BuzzFeed lawyer Catherine Bolger wrote. In other words, basically they're saying, all right, he's suing us for libel, right, I guess, or something quite like it, for publishing the dossier. The dossier said that he went to Prague to try to arrange to sweep under the carpet the details of the relationship between Trump officials and Russia. Maybe including paying them. But he was, in other words, that he was the fixer, as dumb as that is, who was sent to Prague, though he denies ever being in Prague, to cover up damaging information. Now, BuzzFeed says, okay, well, we then want to defend ourselves in his libel suit against us for publishing those allegations by trying to establish the truth of those allegations, or at least the likely possibility of their truth, and see if we can mitigate things at trial. Because, of course, if you're being sued for libel, if you can establish that the things you said were true, well, then you're not guilty of libel. So here's the twist. They say, you know what? Now, in this other story, Stormy Daniels' story, it is alleged that once again, Michael Cohen is appointed as the fixer who's supposed to go and arrange for troubling facts to be swept under the carpet, as they say. I like to say swept under the rug, but okay. In other words, this other activity, which he acknowledges to be true, that he did in fact negotiate to sweep the affair with Stormy Daniels under the rug, establishes that this is actually somebody who Trump turns to for exactly the kinds of things that are, in this case, alleged in the dossier. So as part of our defense in establishing the truth of his having been sent to Prague or anywhere to try and cover up and keep quiet bad and damaging information, we offer the proof that he admits that he played exactly that role in the Stormy Daniels story. And what they're looking for here is they say, Stormy Daniels, preserve all documents. We may call you to testify to the fact that it was Michael Cohen who was sent as the fixer in this case. And while you're here, can you tell us a little bit about what it was he was trying to fix? Exactly what information was it that he didn't want you to disclose? And it says here, and I'm not an expert in this part of the practice, but it says here a non-disclosure agreement, even an existing invalid one as between Cohen or an LLC and Stormy Daniels, would be no obstacle to telling the court in the BuzzFeed libel case exactly what they discussed. How interesting is that? That may or may not be true, but that would be a hell of a maneuver. So I thought I'd throw that one out there for you to consider. Let's see. A couple of other things. I'll say slightly more important even perhaps than that is a reminder and perhaps a justification for something I threw at you at the top of the show. I believe we've discussed it anyway in the past. But now, a few days after the initial, what will we say? It's not quite a Trump denial that the Russians were behind the poisoning of Sergei Skripal in the UK, but he was very reluctant to acknowledge that, to conclude that that was the case. Oh, we don't know who it could have been. Could have been anybody. Could have, like we said, could have been a 400-pound chemist on a bed somewhere. Now the United States, the rest of the United States, officially is starting to try to come back around to that, despite the fact that, of course, he has fired Rex Tillerson for doing exactly that. And the White House's own statements, they're now putting out statements that, I guess, are supposed to be compromises. Well, we stand, we have no reason to disbelieve the conclusion reached by officials in the UK, and we stand in solidarity with them, but it never says, it doesn't mention, I noticed, the president anywhere in the White House's statement. So it's like he's trying to distance himself from, look, my government has to blame Russia, Vlad. Not me. I don't do it myself. The government does. You know how it is. The deep state does it. So he thinks if he keeps his name out of the statement somehow, A, we won't notice, and B, Vladimir Putin will forgive him. But the rest of the world is sort of coalescing around the idea that, yeah, it was Russia and it's time to blame them for it. The UK's Prime Minister made a speech about the subject, and that is the subject of a Lawfare article that was of interest to, I think, many of you in my Twitter feed that Matt Tate put together. The UK Prime Minister's speech on the Russian poisoning of Sergei Skripal, decoding the signals, and it's alleged that there are some deep and very interesting signals from the PM on this about exactly why it is and how it is that they come to blame Russia for this. Again, another article I guess I will commend to your attention, but I wanted at least to make the point that what's happening here with the White House working to keep the president's name out of what they now consider, diplomatically speaking, to be a necessity, that is, aligning ourselves with the UK on this problem, sets up a very real and very problematic issue, which is that a chemical attack was launched by the Russians that injured a far wider number of people than just their target, for one thing, but lots of people living in civilian life as well in danger in the UK because they used a banned chemical nerve agent on the soil of one of our chief allies, and a NATO ally at that. And I'm curious. I mean, they're probably working furiously behind the scenes to try to persuade the UK not to invoke NATO's Article 5 in all of this, in unifying a NATO response to this Russian attack. I mean, here's the problem. The ground facts are that the Russians launched a chemical attack on the UK, and NATO needs to regard that as an attack on the alliance and respond appropriately. But nobody's sure what the hell the appropriate response is. And in the meantime, the President of the United States is doing everything he can to keep his name and approval of that conclusion out of whatever conclusion the NATO countries and the United States on its own behalf finally adopt. Which, you know, although as I'm saying, I'm looking at the morning news here, and did I put this thing elsewhere? I don't know, but I had tweeted about it again once again this morning. Here we go, and I think I saw Greg retweeting this earlier, and that's where I might have picked up Christopher Hope's tweet is what I'm looking at. Christopher Hope is the chief political correspondent of the Daily Telegraph over there in the UK, and he tweets, breaking, leaders of UK, France, Germany, and USA, and that's a select group, right, issue united statement on Salisbury attack, as they're now calling it. The UK briefed thoroughly its allies that it was highly likely that Russia was responsible for the attack. We share the UK assessment that there is no plausible alternative explanation. So, what are we looking at here? First of all, we're actually talking about, in addition to Russia launching an attack against a NATO ally, we are also talking about Russia launching an attack against a fellow permanent member of the UN Security Council. And that, too, has come up, that the UN Security Council can't be taken seriously if permanent members are able to launch chemical attacks against one another and there's no response. But here's the problem that Trump's distancing himself sets up. And I don't see it as a problem. I mean, I see it as a problem that was something we need to do about. I have no problem pointing out this problem. Others will have great difficulty pointing out this problem. Trump distancing himself from the American government's official response puts him at odds with the government at which he sits as head of the unitary executive, according to certain theories, and means that Donald Trump, in his personal capacity, despite the conclusions of the United States and its allies in NATO and its fellow members of the United Nations, permanent members of the Security Council, Trump himself personally, and I gotta cite the language from the statute, adheres to our enemies as they levy war against us and gives them aid and comfort by refusing to join in the conclusion of his own government and its allies that Russia launched this attack. And there's very little wiggle room outside of it. I don't know what else to tell you about this other than the fact that no one is ever going to trigger the mechanism by which Donald Trump would be charged with and presumably arrested for and tried for treason because, oh my God, that means we're really seriously looking at the possibility of sentencing a sitting president to prison or executing him. And that's not going to enter our consciousness. It's just not. We're just not going to. I'm fine with it. You're fine with it. Matthew Dowd, I don't know. I don't think we're going to bring him around. Chuck Todd, well, I don't know. I think we should execute someone from both sides. I don't know what they would say to this. They're obviously not going to accept this, but it's pretty clearly the case that something very, very, very strange and for which there is almost no other plausible explanation itself is happening here. That the president is having the White House issue statements that keep my name out of it. Keep me out of this whole thing. If the government, if the deep state wants to conclude that Russia did this, That's fine. And it makes you think the P-tape's got to be real, or he thinks they're going to kill him, or some of his kids, or I don't know what. And I mean, it's one of the possibilities we haven't really considered yet is, well, how terrified and justifiably terrified would you be if you were in the position, or if you had convinced yourself, oh my God, there's no stopping this guy. Vladimir Putin might kill my children. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all of them. And their families. And who knows who else if I don't go along. Of course, that's a very serious danger. And you should probably say at some point, I can no longer compromise the integrity of the entire United States government and its entire population. Who knows where this may lead? I must step down. But this is Donald Trump we're talking about. So he may, and I guess because it's Donald Trump we're talking about, we might as well just say he may very well not care one way or the other if they kill anybody in the world but him. Killed all my children? That's sad. I don't like that. I'd rather avoid it, especially Ivanka. But now you're talking about something serious. You're talking about killing me, and I can't have that. What else? I mean, what else accounts for him saying, you can say the White House thinks this, you can say the government thinks this, you can say all our government's allies think this, you just can't say I think it. Why not? Because I don't? Maybe. Or because I can't. I'm just asking questions. No, Mr. Conspiracy Theory here. But there's very little other explanation for this weird, convoluted position he's taking, even when he has to acquiesce and allow the rest of the government to go along with it. I don't know. So maybe we need to have Matthew Tate decipher the signals of our government's discussion of the problem after he's done discussing what he thinks the UK Prime Minister's speech means. All right, let's see. That's pretty heavy as topics go. And now, just in order of what I've stashed here in pocket, because we're going to take the rest of the show at random, here's a story that, we haven't mentioned yet, but it's not huge, it's not substantive, it's just like, what in the world is going on? Again, a dumb thing happening. CNBC has this report. Christina Wilkie tweeted this one out yesterday, and of course I follow her on Twitter, so I got to see it. Trump's lawyer in the Mueller probe, one of 50,000 he keeps on retainer, John Dowd. Remember, I think that was the guy who claimed to have drafted a tweet on behalf of or directly for Donald Trump at some point where they admitted to something stupid. Now I can't even remember and put my finger on it anymore. You remember that guy? John Dowd now is cited for a Trump campaign contribution above the legal maximum, because why would a lawyer know what the law is? The bullet points, too long didn't read, bullet points are up here at the top. President Donald Trump's lawyer John Dowd contributed more money last year to the president's re-election campaign than is legally permissible. A March letter from the FEC to the Trump campaign listed Dowd as one of 108 donors who gave more than the individual maximum for the third quarter of 2017 or in the third quarter. And the Trump campaign said it issued Dowd a refund earlier this year. But why would that happen? I don't know. And is that enough? I don't know. But I just found it kind of amazing that the lawyer apparently has no idea what the law is. And I assume that there's something fishy about that beyond just making a mistake, and we'll see if we can't figure that out as time goes on. I guess more on the Mueller probe front, something we haven't yet discussed and sort of presents an interesting angle. Mueller probe expands to Hollywood as Trump arrives for LA fundraiser. How about that? The Hollywood Reporter has that. And this bit is, it brings us back to a name we called out at the end of last week, and about which, that is to say, the name, I still am confused about the connection to Trump world, but our friend Montreal girl, BJ Hutch, as she tweets under, and I guess that's because that would probably be her name. But the label she attaches to herself was MTL. Remember, we had to figure out what is MTL, and then we figured out finally Montreal girl. Has been very persistent in sending me information about Elliot Broidy. That's the guy whose name came up in last week's discussion of George Nader and his bailiwick, his Middle Eastern beat. And Broidy's name kept coming up in this thing. And now he's in this Hollywood story, too. And that's kind of weird. Gary Baum, Scott Johnson, we may just spend the balance of the few minutes here reading through this one to try to get a flavor for it before signing off. Elliot Broidy, a top Trump money man, will co-sponsor a lavish dinner for the president as questions swirl about the Republican power broker's own ties to the special counsel investigation and a multi-billion-dollar Malaysian scandal. Man, it's all over the place. A prominent Los Angeles Republican power broker and fundraiser who has been linked to 2 ongoing political scandals is co-hosting a fundraiser for Donald Trump on the occasion of his first official visit to California as president. That, I guess, would be the private residence at which he dined after viewing the segments of the wall. Is that the case? Elliot Broidy, the Deputy National Finance Chairman for the RNC, is set to preside over a $35,000 per person event for Trump on Tuesday night, there you go, at an undisclosed location in Beverly Hills, not one of the cabanas at the hotel where I met Stormy Daniels. Broidy and his wife, attorney Robin Rosenzweig, a discreet but powerful couple in Republican fundraising circles, have been tied through a trove of leaked documentation received by media organizations to the multi-billion-dollar Malaysian graft scheme. I don't even know about it. That has entangled actor Leonardo DiCaprio and Miranda Kerr, the model and wife of Snapchat founder Evan Spiegel. Wow. The documents also reveal a series of connections between Broidy and U.S. Special Counsel Robert Mueller's inquiry into foreign influence peddling of the Trump administration. 2 Hollywood producers, Stephen J. Brown and J. David Williams, there's a lot of J's there, had close ties to Broidy and are connected via various business dealings, including film projects, to Rick Gates. What? An associate of former Trump campaign manager Paul Manafort, who is now facing conspiracy, tax, and bank fraud charges brought by Mueller. Gates recently chose to cooperate with Mueller's investigation, of course. Broidy has played a role in advising George Nader, a Lebanese-American with long-standing ties to prominent figures in the United Arab Emirates, who is now being investigated by Mueller for secret meetings between representatives of the UAE and the Trump team. In addition to their efforts on behalf of Republican political causes, Broidy and Rosenzweig, who have a home in Beverly Hills and offices in Century City, have a long but sometimes fraught connection to Hollywood, where their efforts at producing and financing film projects have found them in a web of acrimony, lost business relationships, and legal peril, as sometimes happens with rich and glamorous morons. And there are many examples around the country, not just in Hollywood, but here on the East Coast as well. And there's more to it. But once again, I have to commend it to your off-air reading. But I'm going to be reading this probably I have to go and fill out the brackets. But then immediately after doing that, I'm going to read up on this thing. It's pretty amazing how detailed these things are and how many pies this guy, yesterday being Pie Day, has fingers in. And thanks then to BJ Hutch, our Montreal girl, for continually bringing him to our attention. I have a feeling that will pay off eventually. And it, of course, puts me in mind of the fact that I keep trying to put out of mind that Stephen Mnuchin is a Hollywood producer type dude as well. And we've actually seen his movies. So that's troubling all by itself. All right. There's an awful lot here talking about the leaked documents, talking about the political power couple going Hollywood. And very interesting. We'll see if we can find out more about the background of Robin Rosenzweig and whether it reveals anything else that we're going to have to discuss on the air. But we'll have to wait until at least tomorrow to do it, and depending on how amazingly intriguing the balance of this article and the others that I've recommended to you are. We'll see if we have an organized show for tomorrow, or maybe it's all over the place, or maybe nothing matters. LOL, YOLO. Who cares? There are no rules. Just say whatever you want and leave it at that. Speaking of saying whatever you want, the next show will be saying whatever they want and wrapping up the news that we missed today, or maybe doubling back on it for even more. It's the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Let's see if we can cram in a couple of the fascinating topics he has brought up here. Let's see. Starting off, the United Kingdom has, of course, deep concerns about Trump's leniency towards Russia. We did speak about that. And then, U.S. regulators charge Theranos CEO, this is long-awaited, Elizabeth Holmes, with an elaborate years-long fraud. A network of religious groups is offering undocumented immigrants sanctuary from ICE through safe houses, and Chris Kobach plagiarized language from the ACLU when he drafted changes to his federal voting law.
From Daily Kos Radio on networksradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.
Special attention, please, for that Chris Kobach case. He's got this amazing federal case going on right now that's all falling apart around him. They'll also be moving to the chef's table, of course, to examine the extravagant spending by Trump's champagne cabinet. And is there a despicable reason the gun industry has special economic protections in the United States? Of course there is. Stay tuned.